Okay.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to our session for Keep Indiana Learning's Virtually Different Conference called An Educator's Guide to Putting Out Fires. My name is Kayla Holland, and I'm the Director of Education. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology and Blended Learning for Break Free Education. And this is my friend and colleague, Kat Crawford. She can introduce herself.
Hello, I'm the Executive Director of Digital Innovation for the Schlechte Center. And if you want to get in touch with us, you'll have our emails as well as our social contact.
Yeah, excellent. So we're just going to start off a little bit with who is Break Free Education and why do we care so much about the work that we do. So Kat and I both do some work for Break Free Education. And it's a nonprofit organization whose mission is to radically improve education in the juvenile justice system. And we really have the privilege of working with teachers who work in these spaces. And in a minute, I'll talk about what those spaces are, but we call them secure schools. And these are really education providers working inside of confined facilities. So detention centers, incarceration facilities, and those types of facilities in the United States. We partner directly with the teachers and the agencies to provide them resources and training and networks. We develop high quality programs, and we really just kind of try to empower educators in these spaces to really create active learning experiences that are relevant, meaningful, and engaging for kids. And so, like I said, these teachers are working in a secure school. And there's two kind of paths for how students might end up in one of these secure schools. One is a pre-adjudicated path, which is pre-trial, so they've been arrested and haven't been sentenced. And those students are about 700,000 students will go through that channel each year. And then the other path is post-adjudicated, which is where students have been arrested and been to trial and been sentenced. And you'll see typically about 43,000 students in more of a long-term facility, which is that post-adjudicated path. The average student in this space is a 15-year-old male. And then again, these secure schools are educational programs in juvenile justice facilities. So Kat and I are both passionate about our work with Break Free Education. We're passionate about bringing awareness to students and teachers who are inside of those spaces. But why on earth are we talking about it today in terms of our Putting Out Fires session? So because Kat and I do a lot of work with those teachers, when we go to spaces, we often say, hey, how are you doing? How's it going? And teachers will look at us and go, oh, just putting out fires, putting out fires. Because these educational environments in these secure schools are often organized chaos. They have a lot of material restrictions and movement restrictions, and they may have 10 students in a classroom, but they're in 4 different grade levels because they come to school based off their living unit, just simple things like that. So we decided to do something about this I'm just putting out fires mentality. And so we're going to walk you through our session today called An Educator's Guide to Putting Out Fires, using some design thinking strategies to really help you get to the center, the root cause of a problem, and create a solution and some action steps for that initial problem. So we're going to start with this idea of upstream thinking. How in the world do you solve a problem before it happens? So the idea of upstream thinking comes from a book, and you'll see a little bit more about that in a second. But it's this idea from this old folklore about 2 people standing on the side of a riverbank fishing. And the story goes literally that as they're standing there fishing, there's all of a sudden a kid comes down the river drowning. And so these 2 people do whatever normal people do, and they jump into the river to try and save this child drowning. And then they get out into the middle of the river, they get the kid from drowning, and they turn around, headed to the shore, and another kid comes down the river, and then another, and then another. And before you know it, they're in this cycle of response, literally just trying to solve this problem as it's happening over and over, until all of a sudden one of them turns around and heads to the shore, and the other one says, hey, where are you going? And he says, I'm going upstream to get the guy throwing all the kids in the river. So that idea really comes from this idea that we get stuck in a cycle of response for a lot of problems that we deal with on a regular basis. But there's the idea that there are so many solutions to one singular problem. We just have to go a little bit more upstream. right? So there's a quote from this called, it's on your screen, efforts used to prevent problems before they happen, or alternatively, to systematically reduce the harm caused by those problems. Upstream then is not a destination, but a direction. It's a path that we're taking, right? So if you think about this idea of teaching kids to swim, because they're drowning in our story, they're drowning in this river, there are numerous solutions to the problem of students drowning in the river, right? We can provide them with life preservers. We can teach them how to swim. We can drain the river of water. There are lots of solutions, but we have to find the real solution to the individual problem for that moment. So a lot of this session is going to be geared around really looking at the root cause for your problem and then choosing the best solution for it. The next slide is going to talk about some barriers to upstream thinking, because you might be thinking like, this is a great idea. I've never heard about this before. How come I can't think about this with everything? But there are a couple of barriers for this. And if you're interested in this whole idea, it comes from a book called Upstream by Dan Heath. I highly recommend it. I know Kat loves it as well. We both read this last summer and really changed our way of thinking around design thinking practices and problems themselves. So I really highly recommend you read the book. But in the book, it talks about a couple different barriers, and two I want to highlight is problem blindness. Sometimes we're in this cycle of response. We're saving the kids drowning in the river over and over and over because that's our day every day, right? Remember, we talk about our teachers when we say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm just putting out fires. I'm just putting out fires, because we are often blind to the problems that exist every day. There's a great story in the book called Move Your Chair. And this woman basically comes to a conference and she's a little bit late. So she sits in the back. She just kind of takes the first chair that's available. And she happens to be sitting behind a taller person. I'm a very short individual. So I recognize that this could be a problem because it happens to me on a regular basis. So, but this person in front of her is tall and also recognizes that they're tall. And so this person is trying to like shift to make sure the people behind them can see. And so she's in the story, like shifting to this other person shifting, and they're just kind of doing this weaving back and forth until all of a sudden she realizes, oh my gosh, I can just move my chair. So she moves her chair over and the problem is solved because now she can see and she's not behind this tall individual. She's totally blind to the problem itself. She's just weaving and reacting to that problem in the moment instead of owning the problem. Like, I have a solution to this and I can enact it. So that's the barrier number one. The second one is a lack of ownership. We often recognize that we have problems or that problems exist, but we don't own them. We say, can someone please fix this problem? I just wish someone would fix this problem. But when we really take ownership of that and we say, I can fix this problem, I want to fix, or we want to fix this problem, that's when you can really dive into the issue at hand and get to that root cause and create those solutions. So this is a little bit of upstream thinking. If you love this idea, definitely read the book. I'm going to turn it over to Kat to take this into our putting out fires framework.
Thank you. Yeah, we started to think about this concept of, upstream thinking and where all of those different solutions were kind of falling across the river. And that analogy, you could drain the river from water, you could teach everybody to swim, you could throw out life preservers. And the more that we were generating these ideas and thinking through some of the other examples that were a bit more practical and less folklore in the book, we started to see that it tended to be that different solutions fell in different areas of this framework. And as I'm describing it, keep in mind that there isn't necessarily one part of the framework that's better than another. Different problems require lots of different types of solutions, and the solution for a single problem in a certain environment with an ecosystem of people might require a very different solution than another one. And so we don't want you to think about this as a leveling system, but really as a framework where each solution's going to kind of fall depending on what type of problem and ecosystem you have there. And also remembering that we can't try to get to a level where we're investing all of our energy in every problem. We have to think about certain problems and their solutions require more people, more money, more energy because they have a larger impact, or because they're long lasting, because they're more financially, challenging, whatever that may be. And so those are the ones that we spend maybe a little bit more time working through and thinking about at a higher level. So I'm going to walk you through this series of the frameworks, and then you'll kind of understand as we move forward how this can be used when you get to the solutions phase of design thinking. So first we have our extinguish, right? And so you kind of look at something where you're like, oh, there's this problem happening. I'm going to quickly assess it. What is happening? And then I'm going to address it, but it's very likely that this problem is going to come back either later today or first thing tomorrow. Because what I'm doing here is not like, this solution is not a long-term fix. This is just something that extinguishes the problem today, but is not actually doing anything to stop the problem from coming back. Next, you have detect. Now we're kind of analyzing the problem, we're assessing it, maybe we're collecting a bunch of data, but the solution is not necessarily a long-term remedy. It's something that we kind of understand why it's happening, what the forces are, who the players are, and we have a solution in place that might solve that, but that solution isn't necessarily long lasting. It's something where all the right pieces have to be in place for it to be successful. Next is contain, and we definitely see this a lot because this is a really easy space for a solution to live in, especially in education, where the problem has been confined to a small space where it can be further studied and cause minimal impact. And as we mentioned, we work in a lot of juvenile justice spaces, or just alternative schools in general are definitely a space of containment where we're like, oh, okay, some problem has happened in this young person's life, and we're going to put this young person over here for 3 weeks or 3 months, and we're going to see what we can do, but we're going to remove them so that they're not causing as much impact in this other ecosystem. And we're just going to put them in this contained environment and see what we can do about this particular issue. The next one is prevent. The problem has been eliminated, but the solution involves time, resources, and people. And these aren't always the best. Like we were joking about, draining the river. Well, that you definitely can do. It involves a lot of time, a lot of resource, a lot of people, but I think water is going to be pretty critical need. I don't think that the river is just about drowning, right? It also sustains life. It also sustains economy, and there are other factors to it that you're not going to necessarily want because you've just eliminated that. And so just because you see the word prevent and the problem has been eliminated does not necessarily mean that this is the best fix for every single problem that you're trying to find the right solution to. And I find, especially if you read upstream thinking, that when you dive into the prevent space, the preventions often are correlated, but loosely to the problem's origin. And so as Kayla mentioned, we're really looking for the root of that problem. And as you start going underneath the ground, or I'm sure you've heard the iceberg analogy, the shape of what you're dealing with, the elements of what you're dealing with may look really different. If you're really trying to eliminate a problem, it might be something else that your solution addresses so that that problem never happens again. But those types of things take a long time to happen and really take hold. So this is kind of the putting out fires framework, and we're going to talk a little bit about how this might work in that first analogy that we gave you. So in extinguish, maybe the fishermen are just still in that cycle of response, saving the kids from drowning over and over again. They're exhausted, and there's no end in sight to what's happening, and it's so easy for them to make a mistake and to miss a kid or get tired and a kid drowns. Next would be detect. We throw out life preservers and there's some lifeguards around, But as we all know, that doesn't necessarily mean the kids aren't going to drown. It just means that we do have some other preventatives there that, stop these fishermen from getting so tired all the time and don't make them the sole source of solving the problem. Then we have contain. This would be like, what if we literally said every single kid has to learn how to swim? It's like how you pass second grade. You got to learn how to swim or you're not getting promoted to third grade. And then maybe we'll never have a kid drown again, right? Obviously, we know that that's not really possible because drownings don't only happen just because people don't know how to swim, but it would definitely eliminate the issue if we could just contain this one piece. And then, of course, we talked about the prevention. If there was absolutely no water in the river, then kids can't possibly drown. But we know this is not a lifelong sustainable thing that would impact a lot of other pieces. And so that's actually not something we'd be looking for. And we use this example really to show you that it is not a leveling system, because each problem is really going to have its own solution that's best in the framework based on the specifics of that ecosystem and the people who are involved. So we've shared here a template on our bit.ly that you can access after this, so that as you're going through this process, you can use this template to kind of create your own framework solutions. And you'll see as we go through like the different steps that are contained within the template, and you can take advantage of that. So we'd like to start with a goal jam. The goal jam is derived from the Gripe Jam from Jenny Magera in the Google Coach curriculum. And we really like the positivity around the term goal. So what are some things that you as an educator are focused on right now, because these are issues or problems or challenges that you face every day, and it is your goal to come up with creative solutions to address them. And so the first step would be to identify those by labeling them on different Post-it notes. You can use a digital format, or you can do it manually. Then what you want to do is actually organize those problems from one side to the other, from more frustrating to less frustrating. And this is just your own personal opinion. So you now have in front of you a series of things. Maybe it's getting to work on time. Maybe it's being able to grade all of your papers in a timely manner. Maybe it's being able to do all of the sports and clubs that you've signed up to sponsor. And maybe you also have an issue with responding to emails in a timely manner. And so you have to think about which one of these things is more frustrating to you and then less frustrating, and create sort of a continuum at the bottom, whether you're doing it digitally or physically. And then here comes kind of the fun part. You're actually going to take those stickies, you're going to keep them in the same order in the bottom. And if they impact more people, you're going to move them up. If the impact is smaller, maybe it's only an impact on you, or an impact on you in a single class because it's a specific situation in that class. You might keep them towards the bottom or the middle half. But if a lot of people are involved, you want to bring those stickies all the way up to the top. And as you see, we're forming sort of a grid here. And we're looking for that sweet spot. And that's going to be in the upper left-hand corner. That's where you're going to want to focus in to start. And so you're going to be looking at problems that are really frustrating to you and impact a lot of people. And that might be the first place to dig in. You'll notice that some of our stickies have stars. We also ask people to, after they go through the process of sorting all of their sticky notes, to really think about what are two problems that you really are passionate about focusing in on right now. And you'll drag and drop or somehow highlight those with a star. And then again, looking at that focus area, is there something with a star that falls into that grid area? That's where you're going to get started. So I'm going to give you,
Can I just jump in just for a second and just remind people watching that you have a pause button on this
Ah,
video,
yes.
because I know we're going to go through some of this really, really quickly. And the activity that Kat just shared is really vital to you kind of narrowing down that focus area to start when you identify a problem. So we'd love for this to be an interactive session. We'd love for you to literally hit pause right now and go grab some sticky notes and go through your transitioning them from your horizontal line to your vertical line and all of that. So feel free to hit pause and do that. And when you're ready, come back and hit play, and we'll be here with your next part.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you for reminding me about the pause button. So we wanted to show you some examples, whether you're viewing this as an administrator or as a teacher. And so here's an example administrator grid. On the left-hand side, this person said, I'm genuinely worried about safety. Students are really struggling with mental health. I want a better school culture. Teachers are stressed out and overworked. We are so focused on credit recovery. And then I spend less time with my family. So this person put their stars on those 3 sticky notes, and then looking at that highlight focus area, selected students are really struggling with mental health as the area they wanted to focus on first. And we're going to walk you through what the next step is that, but we want to show you the teacher example as well, especially for those teachers watching. So this teacher said, I have to fight with students about phones. Most students are interested in what I'm teaching. All students want one-on-one with me. Students are always late to class. Lots of new tech, no training. Our no homework policy makes it hard for students to practice what we are learning. And I need more ways to offer feedback to students. We never have subs, so I feel guilty taking time off. I feel like as we work and coach educators all across the United States, we hear these things over and over and over again. And this particular teacher decided to highlight in their focus area, I have to fight with students about phones. And so once you've created what that focus area problem is going to be for you, and you're ready to move on to the next step, you're going to start by building out an empathy chart. So here we're looking at empathizing with the user. And what's really interesting about your problem is it doesn't just have one user, it has a lot of users, right? And so if you look at a student who wants to use their phone in class, you have that student. You also have the teacher. You might have some other students who feel some kind of way about that student using their phone or their own ability to use it. You might have parents who say, I want to be able to contact my kid at any given moment, so don't take their phone away. I'm worried about their safety. And you could hone in on any one of these users and think about that problem through their eyes, right? So often we forget that our problems really have a lot of different sides to them. And if you were to look at this problem through the lens of a student or through the lens of that student's parent, or the student's friend who's going through something and is texting back and forth with that student so they can just make it through that class period, whatever that might be, that's how you can build empathy for the different people that are involved in the problem you're trying to solve. And you do that by thinking about, what does that person say? What does that person think? What do they do? And how do they feel? Now, you're not going to have all the answers because you're not that person. So you're going to have to literally put yourself in their shoes and just think about what you imagine might be going on. What might they be saying if you were to be negotiating with them over giving them, their phone up? What might they think when that's happening? How do they actually react to it? And what do they feel like during that time? So for the administrator example, we were talking a little bit about mental health. And so in the center here, we have a counselor, because we know that a counselor is a very crucial component to mental health support in a school district. and thinking about what it is that's happening with a counselor and a teacher and how they're able to handle all of these different things at one time is really, really important. And so if they're feeling like overwhelmed, exhausted, stretched thin, if they're thinking about how they're going to meet with all the students who need their help, why can't we hire more people? I always hear that. If they're thinking about getting pulled into emergency meetings and then that actually happens to them, or they have to create lesson plans to fill social and emotional lessons for students and pitch into the classroom, all of these things play a role in their ability to address the mental health needs of the students in their own school. And next up would be that teacher. And so they've picked the student here, and they're thinking about how the student can't live without their phone, how they can't, you can't take my phone away from me. They have FOMO, a fear of missing out. I think a lot of kids who were able to juggle both their classes and their phones during the pandemic had a really hard time coming back to the classroom and handing that right back over to the teacher or putting it away. And then inside of their bodies, they feel disconnected when they don't have their phones. They feel stressed, they feel jittery. So those types of things can really help you understand what a student might be going through when you're dealing with a phone situation in your classroom. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Kayla, and she's going to walk you through the design thinking process from here.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Those are all such important steps. And again, don't forget about that pause button if you want to complete that empathy map for what does your users say, think, feel, and do. And also all of these activities are in our template that we shared on a couple slides before. So definitely use that bit.ly link and access those. So our next part, so you've selected a problem from your kind of goal jam, as we call it. You've looked at that problem through the eyes of a user, so either a teacher or a student or something in the realm of who is experiencing the problem. Your next step is to answer some questions about the problem itself, and this is really to help you get to the root cause of that specific problem. And you start with things you know about the problem. So you're going to answer questions about it. What do you know? Who does the problem affect? And what's the real challenge here for you? And I love that phrase. That's from a book called, I think it's 7 Coaching Habits. And when you ask that, what's the real challenge here for you? Those words are chosen carefully because it helps you think through maybe that teacher's problem about, students are always on their phone. Maybe it isn't necessarily about the phones. Maybe it's more that the teacher needs more active learning experiences in the classroom and not passive learning experiences. If they're doing some hands-on projects, they may not want to check their phone as often. I know that's a simple explanation, but that's just quickly what that might mean. So looking at what's the real challenge here for you. Then once you feel like you've answered those questions, you go to the I wonder side. So it's literally I know versus I wonder. What do you wonder about your problem? What are the questions that you have about the problem itself? And what do you want to see happen with this problem? Now, when you say, what do you want to see happen with this problem? I don't want solutions from you just yet at this point. I don't want you to hear, you just start saying, oh, well, I'd love to see the river drained of water, if we're using our stream metaphor. What you can say is what you want to see happen. What are the reasons this is a problem for you in the first place, right? So that teacher with the phone example, maybe she just wants to see her students engaged in the content in her classroom, right? So that's what she wants to see happen with the problem. That's not a solution. I'm not solving the problem, but I just am talking through what I wanted to see happen with that specific problem. The next part of this is what we call different angles. And you'll see that on our next slide. And it looks at each angle specifically. So how does this problem affect each group of people. And we just put here teachers, students, and admins. Your problem might be a personal problem. So you might have parents, siblings, pets. I don't know. You could have lots of different things in these circles. But for us, we're focused on education today. So we have teacher, student, and admins. So how are each of these groups affected by the problem? Are they advocates for the problem? Are they supporting the problem? Are they causing the problem? How does each role play a part in why this problem is taking place? So that's the next part. Then you look at what's your influence on the problem. And you do all of this before you even think about solutions, right? So you've selected your problem, you've looked at the empathy map, you've looked at your I know versus I wonder, your different angles. Now we're looking at what is your influence. Before you start thinking about solutions, you have to consider what you can actually influence versus what you can't. And you literally can draw these two circles on a piece of paper and write in the small one what you can influence and write in the big one what you can't. Because it's the most frustrating experience to try and solve a problem that you really have no influence over. I would love to solve the problem, or while it was active and happening, I would have loved to solve the problem of the pandemic. I would have loved to solve the problem of cancer running rapid, through our healthcare system. Those are not things I can influence. So I would have to put that in the things I cannot influence section. You want to solve problems that you actually have an influence over. So it's really important to separate out those ideas of what you can influence and what you can't. Now we get to start talking about solutions. And you can come at this with several different ways. One of our most favorite ways to do this is to put a timer on for 1 minute. And you literally draw a solution for 1 minute. And then when the timer goes off, you get out a new sticky note or a new section of your paper and you set the timer for 1 more minute and you do another one. And you do this for 8 minutes total. It's called the crazy eights. So you can take a piece of paper and draw 8 boxes, or you have 8 separate sticky notes and you do 1 sticky per minute, 1 solution per minute. That's a great way to do that. You can also just look at our putting out fires framework and creatively think of 2 solutions that would be in each individual category. So what are 2 solutions for the extinguish category? The problem is quickly assessed and addressed, but it might come back soon. So what are the 2 ways you could solve the problem if you were just thinking about the extinguish category? Then move to the detect category. The problem's been analyzed and assessed, but the solution is not a long-term remedy. What are 2 solutions that would fit specifically in to that detect category? Again, contain. The problem's been confined to a small space where it can be further studied and cause minimal impact. What are 2 solutions that would fit in there? And then finally, prevent. The problem's been eliminated, but the solution involves time, resources, and people. What are 2 solutions? I love this framework because I really think that when people think of a problem, they immediately think of a solution, one individual solution, and it's usually in the prevent column. And that is the one and only solution they believe is going to solve that problem. And if you learn nothing from our session today, I really hope you learn that there are multiple solutions for each individual problem. So if you do 2 per category here, you're going to walk away with 8 solutions for your problem. Then you consider what is in your influence, what's not in your influence. If we use our kids are drowning metaphor, it may not be in my, sorry, Kat, I haven't moved on quite yet. Yeah. You can go back to it. If we use our kids are drowning metaphor, I may not have the influence to drain the river of water. That may not be in my influence. I may not have the influence to hire lifeguards and provide life preservers. But I can teach kids how to swim, right? And I can stand in the river saving kids from drowning. So some of the solutions you create are going to be within your influence and some aren't. So just kind of connecting those ideas. Now we can go to the next slide and we'll look at the solutions that our administrator example and our teacher example have provided. So for our administrator example, remember the problem was about student mental health. And so in the extinguished category, he's simply stating students cause a safety concern at school. And then you see the sticky note kind of over the line of extinguish and detect, right? Because some solutions might fit a little bit in both categories, and that's fine to do. And that solution is to limit a counselor's responsibility to just counseling. In the detect category, we have train the teachers to supplement the counseling needs of students, screen students every 2 months for mental health concerns. Contain, hire more counselors, purchase online counseling app subscriptions for staff and students, and then in prevent, open a public and free mental health system that supports only schools. So as the administrator, he's created now these several types of solutions, and this administrator needs to just select one and move forward with implementing it. It doesn't mean that some of these are good and some of these are bad. It's going to be, what does this administrator have influence over at this point in time? So if he doesn't have influence over budgets or funding, things like hiring more counselors may not be within the administrator's influence. Purchasing online counseling app subscriptions, if that's going to cost money, may not be within his influence at this time. So, but he might can screen every 2 months for health concerns. He might can train teachers to supplement. So there are practical solutions. It just has to be within what the administrator can influence. Then if we look at the teacher example, same thing. This one again is about the phones in the classroom. So the extinguish is to take away all restrictions and just let students do what they want. You can have your phone. I'm just giving up, almost is what it sounds like. You can take care of it. That's the extinguish category. But then you look in the detect, give phone breaks in the middle of class. So when you looked at when you look at the user map, the empathy map, I remember Kat saying they feel disconnected, right? That was one, as if I'm thinking in the mindset of a student might feel disconnected from their phone. So a great solution might be to give them phone breaks in the middle of the class. If you're going to do a brain break, set a timer. We've got 6 minutes. You can get your phone, use it in the middle of class. When the timer goes off, everybody gets off their phones and they get back to work. That could be a really great solution that doesn't cost anyone any money or resources, but it does cost time because you're giving that 6 minutes in the middle of class. Keep phones that are collected for a longer period of time. Ask students to place their devices on do not disturb. That's kind of in between the detect and contain areas. Collect phones when students enter the school. Get those bags that students put their phones into during class. I know I've seen a ton of what are those shoe holders on the back of doors where they slide phones in and that kind of thing. I think for me personally, that would be even more stressful because I can see it lighting up over there and I just need to know what the notification is. The next one would be ask parents to attend a mandatory digital citizenship training. And then in your prevent care category, you've got a couple: integrate phone usage into the design of daily lessons. That one I really love. Create a social contract around phone usage, and then teach and reteach how to manage phone usage in the classroom. So honestly, with these examples, several in the prevent category are very doable. They are within a teacher's influence over what they do in the classroom because it doesn't require a lot of funding in terms of money. It doesn't require time and resources in terms of the teacher, the students creating a social contract, those kinds of things. But again, it's not that there are good solutions and bad solutions. There are just solutions that are more right. Is that how you say that? Correctly fit into the problem that you have in this moment. So again, remember your pause button is here. If you want to pause, find your solutions. If you want to do the crazy eights, you've got paper you can pull out. Draw 8 boxes on them, 1 minute per box and go, or 1 minute per sticky note. You've got that idea, or you can just do 2 solutions per category. Either way, you get 8 solutions for the specific problem that you've chosen. And then the very last thing we'll leave you with in this session is the final step. What's a step to try? I like to say this phrase, decision paralysis, right? If I have too many decisions, I don't want to make any decision because I just feel overwhelmed in the moment of having too many decisions to make. So I don't want that to be where you end this session. So you have these 8 solutions you've created. Hopefully you've put them into our framework inside of those categories. Now, what's your step to try? select one of those solutions and think through what would you do with the solution in 5 days, in 5 weeks, or in 5 months. So it's just you kind of pinpointing what are these things I do in the next couple of days versus the next couple of weeks versus the next couple of months, right? The number 5 here doesn't matter. It's just a literal way for you to visualize what does the next half year look like in my class. So that's kind of our session for you. There's lots of other things you can do with these design thinking methods. You can try something out and then you reiterate your solution and you prototype something else. Doesn't mean that the solution you pick today is going to be just the absolute perfect one and it runs forever. It really, really could be, but you might be blending solutions together to create that perfect fit for the problem that you're having. So we really appreciate you watching our session and taking the time. You've got our contact information here. You can email us or find us on social media. We also have the link for you here to take the survey for Keep Indiana Learning for their virtually different conference. But please reach out to us if you have any questions. We'd love to hear your feedback on the process, and we'd love to know how you've solved your problems using this framework and what creative solutions you've designed. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.